guys, we love to always start off with asking this question. What got you started
Yeah.
in racing? What was your first official start in it?
Yeah, I didn't have a normal path as most drivers have had. I don't come from a family that has any background whatsoever in motorsports. My family are in the gospel entertainment business, actually, and so it's a different background to come from. What got me into it, though, I honestly don't know because like since I was a kid, my mom tells stories of like how I'd lean out of my stroller to watch the wheels turn and that sort of thing. It's something that I've always loved for whatever reason. And then at 5 years old, I get my first go-kart. It was like a road not even a road cart. It was a yard cart, you could call it. Briggs and Stratton 5 horsepower motor. The driver sat on the left side and the motor was on the left side. So if you took a right hand turn, the thing would flip over.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, so that was my first experience of driving anything from the time I was 5. And I probably drove that thing till I was like 12 years old and just fell in love with that. And then as a kid with internet access at this point, mid 2010s, almost, 2010-ish, somewhere in there. I was a huge Tanner Faust fan because I love the show Top Gear
Oh
USA.
yeah.
And, and I was just Googling and the YouTubing all I could about the cool cars that he was driving and watching, all the Top Gears, all these shows and the whole bit. And one day I basically just Googled how to become a race car driver and, just kind of followed that and tried to figure it out along the way. Found out about a local go-kart track that my dad and I got involved in because it was actually a dirt track because being from Missouri, that's all we have is oval dirt racing. And so it was either, get into racing in this, which wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but it's racing. And, if anything I've learned over the years is, you just got to be able to drive anything at any time and do it well. And so beginning of my career as a driver was really that moment of hopping in an oval cart for the first time and ripping around the track and yeah, I took third in my first race ever at the local level, and so it was off to the races from there. So
And like you say, I started out with some dirt go-karts originally and ran those for about 2 or 3 years, then really stepped away after I'd say just everything got in the way with high school and all that. So didn't really develop as much into anything and I just wanted to stay involved in the racing media. So I reached out to Wyman and we got this kicked off and now it's really taken off and it's been great to see it.
that's awesome. Yeah, it's a different animal learning on dirt because it teaches you car control from a very young age. Everything is about sliding. Everything is just how free can we make the cart without, losing forward momentum, obviously. And
Right.
we were doing things back then like using tire prep and using
Yep.
very, very aggressive strategies on how to make our cart faster, which my dad knew nothing about when we first got into it. And then he says to this day, he thought we were just going to go karting and have some fun. And turns out he had to become a chemist and an engineer and the whole bit to get that thing to go around the racetrack. So
Right, which now it's gotten so far developed in it, they have treaded tires on go-karts and Max is karting, which is ridiculous.
yeah, I've been out of that side of things for so long. I will say I would love to go back to dirt and just try it. Obviously, it's not, main priority, you could say, but I've definitely evaluated some options to, like go try the Chili Bowl or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for me, I never really had a whole lot of dirt of experience. My forte was always road courses, and that's what I always found real natural. Like I was talking about Roebling Road, I've spent a lot of time there on the carts and doing track days and stuff. So road courses were just something natural that felt to me, and I was just a way that is a real rhythm that you have to keep it in, depending on tracks and stuff. But road courses were just a natural flow feel to me.
yeah, it really depends on, where you're from and what's around you, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, all I had around me at when did I start? 14 years old ish in a cart. It was like I'm from Missouri. What do you do? What do you drive? Like we're not going to go drive to St. Louis every weekend and go run at Gateway, in the Margay series that they had at that time. It was like that doesn't make any sense, don't come from a wealthy family or anything like that. So we can either do this local thing or nothing. So that was the only option. And very thankful for the way I started. Yeah, it's a different way to go about the path, though. I mean, what kid wouldn't want to, go run and do European karting and run it like world title championships and that kind of thing? But that just wasn't the path put in front of me.
It's
Right.
strange how paths end up. Go ahead, Jordan.
And then, like you say, I mean, with that European karting stuff, I mean, you look at Lewis Hamilton, he was signed so early to an F1 team, and that could just take off from so far of an angle that it get way too far ahead of you before you even really got started, and it'd be overwhelming, especially at such a young age.
Yeah, I mean, you see it, it happens a lot in karting, where, drivers will very, very quickly move up even, or I'm glad I wasn't exposed to that very early. Like I had to claw my way into doing stuff like that, even at a very, very lower level. Like I eventually got to do some USPKS and so a little bit of SCUSA and that kind of thing, and had to claw my way into it. It wasn't like I was pushed into it, and so I'm kind of happy that it happened that way because, like you said, if you go into it too quickly, you can get really figure out really quick that you're in over your head because the drivers that like I've said before, even with all my experience now of driving prototypes or open wheel stuff, I do not want to go run super nationals. Like if somebody called me to go run super nats, I don't know that I'm going to go do it because those kids are so freaking good in every class that you can't compete with them. Like they're in a cart every weekend, every year, and they're just phenomenal that I don't know that I would want to go and do something like that.
You look at
Right.
some of
And
the
like,
IMSA guys like Danny Formal that we've talked with. He stays in it. Obviously, he's doing all this stuff with Lamborghini all over the world, but he stays in the SCUSA scene of it a lot. And I think that's what really can keep you sharp is even though it's not necessarily the same as being in a GT car, but that karting, I think really keeps you sharp and can make you a really better driver even when you're in a higher level series.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like it's there's no better workout as well to keep you in shape than the karting stuff, right? There's nothing more physical than a shifter, and the level at which you have to drive. If you can do 30 to 40 minutes in a shifter straight, fill up the gas and just run it till it's dry. I mean, you can drive just about anything in the world because that thing is so physical. Um, it's an animal to have to drive one of those. And like you said, it keeps you sharp, it keeps you ready for the next challenge. Now, compared to like a GT car, as when you go from a shifter or something like that to a GT3, you definitely have to slow everything down then, right? It's like when a kid goes from karting straight over to a Formula Ford or an F1600 or whatever it might be, open wheel baby race car. All of a sudden they're driving the wheels off the thing and they're just pushing too hard and they're overheating the tire, simply because you can't drive a car like you could a cart, right?
right. And like you say, I mean, that dirt go-kart racing thing, like you were saying, everybody's in a cart every weekend. There was at one point, I believe, we kept track of it. We were not a every weekend, I think there was only 10 weekends out of the 52 weeks that we have that we were not at a racetrack. I mean, we were, you name it, Talladega dirt track, I mean, Charlotte dirt track, you name it, we were probably there at some point during the season. And it's like we come home and then we're off for a week or so, and then it's, oh, we're on the road for the next 4.5 weeks. Like you can't really prepare for anything, and you got to take stuff on the fly.
Yeah, that's the great thing about karting as well is that you can just do it more, right? You get to just
Right.
drive a lot. Whereas, and you move up to cars and because they're so costly to drive, you don't get to drive a car all that often, right? Like you do some testing or you do some races, like an IMSA season in a prototype is like 5 to 7 races depending on the schedule, right? Which is not a lot of driving, honestly, when you think about it.
Right.
And I think that's why you see so many of those guys do dual seasons in a WEC, just so they can get that extra seat time. You look at the Penske guys; they're always back and forth in Europe. The BMW guys, and I think those are the two that you look at the most. That they know the seat time is valuable, and so they go over to Europe and run the races, as well as come back to America and run the full season here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those guys have dream schedules, to be able to go and run full-time IMSA and then do full-time WEC. And then some guys are also doing ELMS stuff or Asian Le Mans series and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's like the dream come true kind of thing to get to do, right? There's a very, very slim group of guys that get to always be driving phenomenal machines like that.
Alex, looking back at your career, I think you've worked with two of the probably the best drivers to have as co-drivers. Memo Gidley, who's just a phenomenal one. That he's been around forever and raced in just about everything. And then we've also talked with your most current one, James French, who's also a great
Okay.
one. How have those two really helped you as a driver, maybe learn cars or new tracks that you've never been to before?
Yeah, I mean, the one that sticks out by far, I mean, nothing against James, but Mamo Gidley, getting to hop in a car with him was one of the coolest experiences of my life because, he got to do what every driver wants to do, right? He got to run not only an Indy car, but like at the peak cool era of IndyCar racing, right? He got to drive the 900 horsepower champ cars and crazy grip from the tire and like I said, big horsepower, different chassis. Like he got to drive some of the coolest cars ever, and he's told me so many stories about that. But I will say the coolest part about working with Mamo was the fact that like that was my first big year in IMSA. Like that was my, you could call it big break, if you will. But getting to work with him was like, okay, this is how you behave as a race car driver. Like, from that time beforehand, it was all junior formula stuff and karting obviously before that. And so he was the guy that kind of like took me under his wing from the start and like showed me, okay, this is how you do it. Like this is how a veteran behaves. This is what you do with your engineers. This is how you work with your team and all that kind of stuff and how you really relay information and he just was such a wealth of knowledge. I still talk to him probably weekly, honestly. And he's just was the best teammate to ever have, the nicest guy ever. And the fact that, our first season together was for his first time back in a prototype since his horrible accident in Daytona in 2014. It was just it was like a Cinderella story of a season, nearly won a championship together as well. So yeah, that definitely sticks out in my mind. But we're getting to work with James. I tell you what's so impressive about James French, and it's that he's so knowledgeable on the race car, right? And he's so good. He's an engineer. He has a degree in engineering, and I couldn't even tell you what it is specifically, but he's super quick also. But the most abundant thing that learning from James was just the development of the car throughout the year. And again, just how you speak to the engineer and how you create a setup also with limited information. Like when you go to Road Atlanta and the setup says we should do this, but you're feeling this, how do you execute and find the window that you're supposed to get into with only really one practice session, right? And being able to get the car in a really really fast window very quickly, it was impressive to always get to work with him and see that aspect from the technical side.
Right, and like you say, I mean, so many drivers in the NASCAR side of things too. I mean, you look back at Alan Kulwicki, he had a degree in engineering, and he had probably one of the most dominant seasons we've probably seen in I mean, I wouldn't say like in a while, but like for his time era that he was in, that was probably one of the most dominant seasons you ever see. I mean, he won the championship, obviously, but that engineering background, he said, helped him with that, which most drivers didn't have that engineering background, and he did. So he knew the extra information that drivers didn't know.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a double-edged sword because I tend to go both ways on it, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm not an engineer, right? But I can speak to what the car is doing, and one thing you never do as a race car driver is you never get out of the car and tell the engineer, hey, I want you to do this to the front bar. I want, 200-pound less spring in the rear, and let's go to the third spring and do this. Like the engineers don't want you to do that. They don't love being told how to set up their race car, right? It's theirs. So being able to relay the information is super important and not stepping on toes in that way, where like I said, it's a double-edged sword where you have some drivers who are completely just wing it and just figure it out, and drive the wheels off the thing, and it is what it is kind of thing, right? Is it understeering? Is oversteering? Meh, it's kind of meh, it's doing whatever. Versus you have super duper technical guys that sometimes can't get out of their own head and basically just drive the freaking race car, right? They're so in their head about the technical point of the car that sometimes you just gotta, race cars are never going to be perfect. I've driven maybe a perfect race car once in my life, right? Where you just got to sometimes drive what you have and wheel the thing. Maybe it has some understeer in it, or it's doing this in turn five that you didn't like, but you just have to drive the car. And so it's good to be in the middle of that spectrum, I would say. But drivers are on each end of that.
And more times than not, when you not always gonna have a perfect car though, but when you get in it, it's the adaptability. When you get in and start just getting in that rhythm and just driving, you tend to find that perfect spot that you wanted, but it helps that you just got to get out there and drive, and it'll come to you over time in that, let's say stint.
Yeah, and you have to be able to like make the changes on the fly as well. Like most race cars have 1 to 2 adjustments that you could make into, that you have like the GTPs or whatever that are 22 adjustments that you could make on the wheel alone to make it better, like diff or your regen or whatever it might be. But you might be having a terrible day. This car is all over the place. It's not doing what you wanted. But hey, let's go to the brake bias and just see what that does. And it's about, staying positive as well in the cockpit and not letting a bad car ruin your day because, you could drive yourself all the way to the back. And had you just put your head down, you might have caught a lucky yellow and been in the right spot. And who knows what could have happened, right? So you're never it's not over till it's over. So you always gotta stay positive. And hey, this car is a pile this weekend, but hey, we're gonna make the most of it, right?
Last couple
Right.
of years, like you said, we've seen you in the two prototype series with IMSA and now HSR. Obviously similar cars but different series. How did those two really improve your career so far? Because one of them was a championship season, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to also learn the ins and outs of the different chassis, right? Because the first year in the IMSA series was the Duquesne chassis of the LMP3, and then moving to the Ligier later on, both with Performance Tech and then with Wolf Motorsports. And so understanding the nuances of those chassis and how those cars operate and just being able to put laps in a race car is always important, right? And getting just straight up seat time and understanding the car underneath you, because most drivers, it takes you you can find 99% of the time in the car or even 100% of like a qualifying lap. Like you could get the absolute most out of it, say in just a week of driving this car, but you're gonna find how to drive it quickly while saving tires a little bit later on, right? Or you're gonna be able to find really, really good pace while saving fuel, or it's the nuances of the that make the greats great, like a Scott Dixon or something like that, right? Who can save fuel, save tires, and somehow run very, very similar laps to like an Alex Palou who's burning the rears off the thing because they told him to push, right? And so that's the cool thing of getting to drive both of those LMP3 cars the past couple of years is just understanding the different chassis dynamics of what this car does, how it differs, and also weather conditions and how the Michelin tire is, how it reacts to this type of thing, or it's really cool to dive into those details of it.
Right. And like you say, another thing, kind of switching hands of different cars here in a way. For one, we've seen you this year at Indy Next, the Indy, and obviously, like you say, I mean, you're a talented driver, you like to step into different disciplines as well. But we also seen you test LMP2 with JDC as
Yep.
well. Would you say that you're more open to going to the Indy side or the LMP2 side, or how do you see yourself in that way?
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation I had with Mamo Gidley and a couple of other drivers that I look up to where um any driver wants to go open wheel racing, right? Any driver wants to be in the Indy 500. If they tell you they don't, they're lying because, it's the greatest race in the world. Who doesn't want to do 240 miles an hour at Indianapolis, right? And, that's always been my dream from the time I was getting into karting. It's like, okay, like that's the coolest series in my opinion. Obviously it's super competitive. A 10th can separate first to 15th, and so it is very much a driver series. So yeah, my goal has always been IndyCar. Now when you don't have the capability of just writing the check to go and do what you want, it's motorsports is difficult for that reason, right? It's no secret that it takes money in this sport. So yeah, my perfect world scenario is I want to go to the Indy NXT Championship and go full time with that next season and try to make my the best shot I can at it, because in speaking with Memo, bringing that back up, he brought up to me the fact that any driver can go race sports cars at any time in their life, right? You can go run Le Mans when you're 50 years old, 60 years old, whatever it might be. I mean, it's just a matter of opportunities, funding, all those kinds of things, right? And on the contrary, there is one little window of your racing career that you get to try and go run and have a successful career in IndyCar, right? So while that time is still now for me, I love the sports car side of racing. Believe me, the P2 car is the best car I've ever driven. It is a rocket ship on wheels. It has the most insane downforce I've ever felt. It is better than the NXT car, right? The P2 car is so good everywhere. It's such a well-developed car. Whereas like the NXT car, you're wheeling that thing everywhere. No power steering. It's trying to it's like a bucking bronco everywhere. That thing's trying to slide on you. It's all over the place. But that's also, fun, and it has its place. But all of that being said, yeah, I want to go IndyCar racing like any driver. So that's 100% the focus going into, well, like right now for all the conversations I'm having right now, and also, going into preparing that effort for 2026.
Right, and like you say, I mean, Memo definitely said it the best anybody could possibly say. I mean, anybody can go run sports cars with the money behind you at any given time, like the 50 and 60-year-old range, like you said. I mean, you could have, I mean, anybody, like for instance, like Joe Nemechek or somebody like that. He could go and run Daytona at the Rolex or whatever if he wanted to, with the money or whatever, or the opportunities at any age. I mean, you look at his son John Hunter, who just stepped into the Cup Series. I mean, John Hunter can go race with his dad in sports cars
Yeah.
and have just about the same successful career that his dad would have, if not better.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and like I said, there's that window of opportunity that you have to take for an open wheel career, right? It is a very, very small time, and the seats are much more limited. It's you look at IndyCar, there's 27 spots, I think, right now, 27 cars, and whereas sports cars, there's not to say it's easier, because sports car racing is very, very difficult. Those guys over there are so good, so I'm not trying to say anything against that. I think a Nick Tandy or Antonio Felix da Costa or somebody like that. Anyone over in WEC, like all the factory dudes in every program could go run an IndyCar and be a successful IndyCar driver, right? It's just a matter of opportunities, where their career went, those kinds of things. So nothing against those guys at all. But like I said, there's that sliver of time and you got to make the most of it.
I think when you look at it, both IndyCar and sports car racing is just skyrocketing here in the U.S. and not only worldwide. Um, I think the reason sports cars does is because you can take, for instance, the GT cars, Porsche, the Mustang, Corvette, Ferrari. You can go buy those cars right now at a dealership, um, and it's practically the same car minus some different safety things and stuff. But I think IndyCar's taken off because you see Pato O'Ward and Alex Palou, two names right there. Those guys were over there doing F1 stuff. They go do FP1s and private test sessions with the team. So people are seeing people go from one series to the next. And I think that's one of the reasons IndyCar is so big now in the U.S.
Yeah, and I think IndyCar as well, like it's definitely benefited as well a little bit from the Drive to Survive fandom, right? Where people got into F1 and therefore then, they're an American fan and they don't want to spend, half their life savings and a kidney to just go to the Vegas Grand Prix. So it's much easier to go to Laguna Seca or something like that for an IndyCar weekend. And then they figure out, well, number one, the racing's better, right? And number two, like it's a phenomenal series with serious access for the fans and all those kinds of things. And I don't dog any racing series because I think everybody should be fans of everything, right? If you're an F1 fan and you talk down about GT3 racing or IMSA or whatever it might be, then you just haven't explored it yet, right? Um, I think the popularity of IMSA right now is awesome as well because I love the fact that the hypercars and the GTPs might be the coolest era in racing like ever right now. We're in a new golden era of sports car racing where there's more manufacturers than ever and still more showing up, like Ford showing up in a couple of years and McLaren and Genesis and all these brands are hopping into it, which is just fantastic to see. And the part I love as well, you bring up like the GT3 cars are literally those show cars on the showroom floor, right? That looks like a GT3 RS street car. But what I also love to that note is the fact that you look at like the hypercars, which are just crazy looking prototype machines. But I love the fact that you look at the Cadillac GTP, it's like that's a Cadillac. You can tell, even though it's this spaceship looking race car, it still has the nuances and look of that is a Cadillac or that's a Porsche or that's a Lamborghini. And I love that that's an aspect of it. I would love to see somehow IndyCar getting a bit of that. Like I would love to see like manufacturers being able to play with the bodywork in IndyCar maybe and being a little less spec. Um, but yeah, that I think that's a phenomenal side of the sport that they've actually absolutely knocked it out of the park.
And I think that's kind of held IndyCar back for the last few years. That kind of became an all spec series. The Laura's had the same chassis, the DW12, for over 10 years or so. And really, the only major changes they've done is the aero screen, which was a needed change, though. But I think Honda and Chevy, there needs to be a little more competition. Honda's been kind of threading at the needle last few years about pulling out, but I think they're going to stay though. But I know the last few years Ferrari has been kind of fiddling with it and talking about coming over. But I think IndyCar, that's what's kind of held IndyCar back the last few years, that they've kind of become a spec series.
Yeah, I mean it's held it back in one way, but also it improves the competition. Like I said earlier, the best era of IndyCar racing was that kart era or that champ car time of when you had, Reynards and Lolas and Swifts and a bunch of different engines. And yeah, at the end of the day, it all comes down to costs, right? And it comes down to the series being very healthy. And I think IndyCar is on the come up for that. And, with the hybrid implementation, I know a lot of people aren't happy with it, but, hoping to see that move in the correct direction where more manufacturers get involved, right? There needs to be a third manufacturer as soon as possible, right? And hoping that that hybrid will help attract that, right? Yes, there definitely needs to be a new car. The current Indy car is, very old. Great racing though. Obviously, they have developed the crap out of that Indy car and that DW12 to try and get every last inch out of it. And it shows like when the top 15 is separated by a tenth or two. And I would love to see a new car. Obviously, they've announced it's going to happen in 2028. I hope it's, an aggressive car. I hope it's a lighter car as well. I love the old era of the way those Reynards and Lolas looked, that very aggressive look. Would love to see something like that. Obviously, this is all just speculating right now, but I agree with you. There does need to be some new updates to IndyCar, but at the end of the day, it's tough sometimes because it's all a money thing, and the people that compare F1 to IndyCar sometimes, oh, F1, they have new cars every year. It's like, well, yeah, like one F1 team's budget could fund the entire IndyCar grid. Like it's not a fair comparison of how they do things. So I think IndyCar is 100% going in the correct direction. Maybe it just needs to be increased exponentially from where it's currently at.
And like you say, this is really our last question for you that we have prepared at least. I mean, it might lead into another question, but this year we haven't really seen you much in a car, like you say. Do you think later in the year we could see you at the racetrack, or is it mainly focused on just planning for next season at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, having those conversations at all times right now. Like, every day is emails and phone calls and all that kind of fun stuff. Does look like we're going to be doing some cool sports car opportunities later in the year, potentially for the Indy IMSA race as well as Petit Le Mans.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
everything has just been basically the grind of 2026, right? Because of that full focus on the Indy NXT series, and it's it's not a cheap budget, I will tell you that. So it's formulating those partnerships and bringing those people in to help make that conversation much easier. But I will say, yeah, you will see me in a car more in the later stages of this year.
Right, and like you say, we will be at Petit Le Mans later on this year. We do plan on that. We've already got that on our schedule marked down for that weekend. Like, hey, we're going to be there. So we'll see you there if you are there, and we'll definitely
Awesome.
stop by and say hey.
That's one of my favorite week. I mean, for the IMSA season, it's probably my favorite weekend of the year. I love that, like, Daytona is a very, very close second. Obviously, it's the Rolex, but I just love Petite. I love going into the night at Road Atlanta, and you can't see anything in those cars that time of night.
Right,
And it's yeah, it's just the best weekend of the year for IMSA.
And that was a great way, I think, to end off the season last year with Ringer, with no headlights in the last 5 minutes, and
Yeah.
I was right there when the Mustang wrecked, and oh my goodness, that last hour was probably the most chaotic I'd ever seen in an IMSA race in a long time.
You can always count on an IMSA race like not ending in a boring way. They always have something thrown at them at the end, right? Somebody runs out of fuel, there's a wreck, there's something, and then it's always, 10 hours of racing, and somehow it comes down to the top three are battling it out, with two to go. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if they're planning those cautions, but it's perfect the way they do it. So.
right, and like you say, obviously, like you said, we're going to be at Petit Le Mans and everything, and if you're there, we'll swing by, say hey, and everything. But we want to wish you best of luck for the rest of the year, and
Absolutely.
we're looking forward to seeing you in the car
I
towards the end
appreciate it,
of the season.
gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Alex, and we hope to see what happens later this year. We're excited for it. That's
Yeah,
two big races, Indy and Petite, so we know those will two be exciting.
yeah,
Right.
buddy. We'll see. We'll just I'll keep you posted. So
Oh
So,
yeah,
sounds good. We'll definitely have some things made for whenever all that news gets broke, and we'll be right there to report it.
fantastic,
absolutely,
All right. Well,
awesome. I appreciate you
thank you
guys.
again for coming
absolutely.
on, Alex, and we'll holler at you later on in the season.
Awesome. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right.